Hello, good evening. How's everyone doing? Excited? That's awesome. Welcome to Google Cloud Next. It's great to have you all here. So my name is Rodrigo Rocha. I am in the Ecosystem Partner Organization at Google Cloud, looking after a series of our partners, including the AI and Business Applications ISV partners. And you are in the Collaboration 2.0 session, how AI and data is actually changing the collaboration space, and we are super excited to talk more to you about that today. So this is actually a very interesting and exciting theme, so I'm very excited to hear about what our panelists are going to bring to us today. So joining me here, I have Brian Goldstein from Google Cloud, I have Dan Connell from Dialpad, and John Radko from OpenText. So let's hear directly from them as we go through the intros. Brian.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's nice to see everyone. Thanks for being here at the end of the day. My name's Brian Goldstein, as said, and I look after our go-to-market motion for AI globally at Google Cloud.
So I'm Dan O'Connell, the Chief AI and Strategy Officer at Dialpad. I've been at Dialpad for 5 years. They acquired my startup, which was a real-time speech rec and NLP startup. And then Dialpad's a customer intelligence platform. We power voice video meetings on any device anywhere in the world and then help businesses understand what's happening within those conversations. So thrilled to be here.
I'm Judd Radko, a Senior Vice President of Engineering for OpenText. I joined OpenText in 2014 when they acquired my company, GXS. OpenText is a huge company. It's probably the biggest software company you've never heard of, about 25,000 people around the world, 180 countries. The areas I represent are content management, digital experience, our B2B trading platform, business network, and platform engineering. But the OpenText goes way further than that around security, developer tools, cybersecurity, ArcSight, a whole bunch of, and including mainframe modernization. So really excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So let me frame this session a little bit for you today. So certainly Google Cloud, we are involved with a series of our partners across the entire stack, going for foundation models, partners that are working with us on the tooling for AI and data, and certainly the partners that get our stack and innovate on top. And this session is particularly near and dear to my heart because it's how this technology is infusing itself into the collaboration tools that we use every day to communicate with one another and to be productive in the workspace. So it's super exciting to hear the point of views of several of them here. Brian is going to bring the voice of the customer from his job here at Google, and hearing Dan and John's point of view as well. So let's begin with our first question here. So I wanted to hear from you, Brian. What are the key issues and challenges the organizations are facing when they are looking at increasing their workforce and collaboration today?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, I mean, first of all, there's no doubt that the need for collaboration in our experience is only going up. When you layer on top of that this return to office versus not return to office, depending on what week we're in and who we're talking about, there's an enormous amount of pressure that's been added to everyone's work life in terms of being able to collaborate with folks that are part of the job and part of the task in front of them. The other thing that I think we've learned over and over, and the science bears this out, is that teams are really the most effective way to get most work done. We're not operating in silos, we're not operating independently, and we can sort of cross that proverbial line and grab the rest of the folks from various functions to join us on the journey of getting work accomplished. We seem to be a lot more effective, and we come up with much richer results, and so that's driving a need for richer collaboration, of course. And then on top of that, the combination of just technological evolution and the pace at which we're all consuming information, I think, has added an enormous amount of pressure on all of us to deliver results at a much more rapid clip than ever before. So you put all those things together, and I think you're in a little bit of this perfect storm of where you absolutely have to have a collaboration tool set that enables you to do work effectively. And I think this is a big topic on a regular basis, certainly one that we find ourselves talking about in the market.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dan, how about from your vantage point?
Yeah, I think for us, what we've seen, fortunately, as I said, we power communications on any device anywhere in the world. And COVID obviously accelerated this trend of, hey, if you're a business that's not been on the cloud, you have to move to the cloud. Suddenly you have to figure out how to manage that software. But also, suddenly you have all of these remote employees. And the question then comes, how do we share information? How do I know what people are doing? If you think of the opportunities in service and support, how do we engage with customers? And so I think, we'll get into kind of the use cases and opportunities for Gen AI, but those are all of the challenges that I think have popped up specifically in the communications collaboration space for us.
Awesome. John?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's said so far, and I want to add one of the hardest parts is to empower teams with information. So if you think about it in a collaboration, how much time is spent digging for information and finding out what the organization collectively knows already, but that the team members have to go out. It's so much more impactful if the team members can start with that information available and ready, and then spend their time on innovation and problem solving.
Yep. No, absolutely, John. And you both, you and Dan touched on a key point around areas of opportunity. So we looked at certainly how customers are trying to redesign their workforce environment. And from your vantage point, where are you seeing, John, the areas of opportunity, particularly on solutions like yours that are so heavily based on data and AI in order to function and deliver value?
So I think there's a huge number, but I'm not going to bore everybody with all of them. There's two I wanted to share. The first is this idea of content generation getting a first draft. So a lot of times people struggle with like the empty page syndrome. And so what we're trying to do is put into some of our products, like our experience offerings, the ability to kind of type in a text sentence and get like, I need an outbound notification about a power outage for a utility company. This is not the one you're going to send. Okay, we're not there yet. But it gets you started and gets you collaborating. The second one is this ability to address what I was talking about earlier, to go course across and bring back summaries of information to get teams started, to hunt down and find what we already know. I mean, if you think about you're going to go visit an important client, we have tons of data on that client, but it's spread all over the place. Can we go out and gather it? So those are areas we're looking at, but that's unique to kind of our business.
That's awesome. Brian, what do you get from a customer vantage point, and what are customers telling us about these very same opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, candidly, I think we are in sort of the early innings of some of this generative AI evolution, and as it relates to collaboration. And I think what we're seeing is that tons and tons of customers are exploring ways that they can take largely existing internal collaborative processes and overlay generative AI to make them more effective or more efficient. What I'm most excited about, candidly, are the places, and they're less frequent, but the places where we see incredibly innovative ideas to not just impact the customers who are consuming the collaboration platform, but the customers of those customers. And I think that's where the biggest TAM is, the biggest opportunity, not just for us as a provider of these solutions collectively, but also just for the market. I think that's where this whole thing really, really explodes, and some amazing opportunities start to surface for everybody at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And building on that, what are the strategy actually that the customers are employing in order to go after that? Then, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, in terms of strategies, I think the biggest thing is there's obviously a plethora of opportunities when you think about how to apply AI. I always tell people as a strategy is go and find one problem and focus on that one problem. Don't try to implement AI across every different team and every different business unit. For us, we really focus, for us as a customer intelligence platform, we really focus on teams that are revenue focused and how do we help them drive more revenue or reduce churn, because that's going to impact both their top and bottom line. And so usually my advice to those businesses is, hey, revenue generating teams and service teams are great places to start with AI. There's tangible benefits. And again, some pretty easy implementations that we'll get in and talk about too.
Absolutely. John, how about you?
I couldn't agree more. I think people need to experiment, and you need to experiment by focusing on outcomes. So don't dwell so much on the technology, but think about a problem that you've been working on. The one area, and I think everyone will agree, is the one area you've got to put some thought to up front is security and privacy. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but besides security and privacy, I think you should not be afraid to make mistakes or worry that you haven't thought it through all the way. I think it's a great time to be experimenting with this technology.
Excellent. Brian, anything to add?
No, I would just say I really like what you just said. I think it's really important. I run into a lot of conversations where executives are spinning a little bit. Like they want very much to get involved and they want to do this work, but they're not entirely sure how to do it in a way that's either going to make or save them money. And there's also sometimes fear around taking too big of a leap and then finding yourself in the deep end of the pool, so to speak. And so what I often encourage people to do is make sure you do take a step. You don't want to miss this magic moment, so to speak. but be incredibly thoughtful about it and contemplate the things that we're talking about, like security and sort of social benefit, and making sure that you try to do things in the most risk-free way possible, but certainly take steps and ground them in either making or saving money for your organization. At the end of the day, I think that remains critical to running a business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talked already about the type of problems that customers are trying to address. We also talked about the areas of opportunity. So how about we switch the gears? All of that will require customers to redesign and rethink processes and make different investments. How do they future-proof those investments? So, Dan, you want to share your point of view?
Yeah, I think future-proof. I was just having conversations today, and what I think is really interesting from a customer angle is they now are asking us to go and share their roadmap. They want to know, hey, it's not just about generative AI today, but it's about how are you planning to leverage, Google Vertex and AI technologies in general the next 12 months or 16 months or 36 months out. And so I think those are just expectations that everyone should be prepared for, whether you're in a lot of you might be developers out there, is those are the questions that are already coming up from customers. It's not about just the innovative technology that you have now, but it is about what does that roadmap actually look like? And are they going to be picking a winner that's going to be around? Because as much as the hype is out there, I think we really are at this unique moment where every piece of software is going to get rewritten. It's going to have massive disruption for some of the larger legacy businesses that are there, and people want to make the right bets, and so you got to lean into that and have a clear story and articulate that well.
John?
I think a key thing is to not make commitments too early where you don't need to. And Dan and I were talking about this in the lead up. This is one of the reasons both of us, I think, chose to go with Vertex. We're committed to certain problem domains. We're confident our customers have had these problems for years. Problems are timeless. I'm confident after the keynote and some of the sessions we've seen here that Vertex is going to continue to evolve. As new LLMs come out, it'll adopt it as new things come out. So one of the ways to be future-proof is to not place too big a bet on any particular future at this stage. This is an emerging technology. Anyone who tells you they know what's going to happen is wrong. They're either mistaken or they're misleading you.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, and actually leads up to my next question. So certainly we're seeing the birth this year of generative AI getting to enterprise class users and all of that, but it's not a one and done. How do we keep the culture, change management and culture of innovation going as a flywheel inside of the organization? What are your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, one of the unique things for us is not every business does hackathons, but I'm a huge proponent of hackathons. I think, one, it allows you to bring your engineering and product teams together, but we encourage our sales organization and our customer success organization to try to partner up. But the best ideas, especially for new technologies, come from people, their own ideas. And something I think that's unique for us is we go through this hackathon. We all vet from an executive leadership team the best features. We do a company-wide celebration, and then we commit to actually getting a few of those hackathon ideas into the product so they become real. But again, experimentation, especially when it's new technologies, and encouraging that culture of innovation, I think is critical.
I love that answer, but you took it already, so I'm going to give another one. I think the most interesting things happen when you have problem domain expertise, subject matter experts, align with people who are skilled in technology. We have the subject matter experts in our organizations right now. So what we've got to do is commit to development, training, sending people to conferences like this. And in the case of larger organizations like OpenText, we've got to actually create a community where teams that are doing interesting work in AI and other innovation areas across the company are meeting and presenting to each other regularly. I came to the Cloud Summit back in June, and it really transformed how I was thinking about generative AI, mostly from the coffee conversations. I mean, the pitches were great, but hearing what everybody was doing, we've got to create that experience every day inside of our organizations.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And you all already touched on a few use cases. We have a large audience with us here today. And what are some of the key examples and use cases that you're exploring in your organizations and that we are hearing also from customers on how they want to disrupt generative AI into the collaboration space? Maybe we start with you, Brian, this time.
Yeah, I would just probably say the biggest thing that I find us talking about is code generation and code completion right now. I think that's perhaps the most exciting thing. For some time, there's been a lot of focus on sort of content and that's still an incredibly exciting domain, and there's a lot of opportunity to evolve that. But I got to say, this conversation around code has become front and center in every discussion that I'm having these days.
Excellent. Dan?
Yeah, from the customer intelligence standpoint, so digital deflection, actually having chatbots that can go and solve really complex automated workflows. We get really excited about the summarization of data. I don't think anybody should ever read a transcript ever again, but not just the summarization, the categorization of data. Specifically, when you get into service organizations, a lot of it is unstructured. We take bad notes, we throw humans at the problem to try to label that data and get it in a structured way to make business insights. And Vertex large language models are great at actually categorizing data if you provide them with the right input and prompt. So we get really excited about the opportunities to help businesses simply make better decisions because that data becomes structured.
Yeah. How about for you, John? The key use cases you guys are pursuing?
I'll give you two, just for a little variety. From a content management point of view, I think the most exciting thing is to be able to have a conversation with a document. So we'll send in a large document, something like 40, 50 pages, and a contract or a statement of work, and we'll start asking questions of it. What's the DR commitment here, or how much time we do, or what's the price? And it's really just magic when you see people using that. Second one, kind of playing off of Brian, we have a development tools platform called Value Edge, and we're using AI both to do test coverage analysis, and then it will write you unit tests for the gaps. Now, again, I wouldn't recommend using the tests without further editing and enhancement, but from a productivity of QA perspective, that's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Just think about that example John mentioned a second ago, talking to a document. If I had shared that with you 6 months ago, you would think I was talking sci-fi, stuff way out in there in the future. No, that's today. That's OpenText today. So super, super exciting. So there are several folks here in the audience today that they are asking the question, how do I get started? So what are the tips that you have with how do I get started in generative AI and start transforming collaboration in my company? So John, let's begin with you.
So I'm going to take Dan's advice and say start with a use case, pick an outcome, and then, shocking, but I swear Google didn't tell me to say this, I would say start with either Vertex or something like it. And the reason I'm recommending that is you don't want to spend all your time downloading stuff and setting up VMs and running it, because unless that's your business, right? If you're in the business of running LLMs, more power to you. But what you really want to do is get to producing some outputs early on. Don't even think about going beyond the lab till you've talked about security and privacy. But beyond that, experiment. Experiment and start to get a feel for what's going on and see what's going on out there in the world.
Excellent advice. Yeah, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, to follow along with that, I think the other piece that comes up is making sure that you carve out time and resources for this. And I think for us, we have these teams that we should call tiger teams, which is ultimately we go carve out specific engineering resources. It's engineering product design. They're tasked with experimentation. They're tasked with building innovative features. And fortunately, our CFO and our CEO sit there and say, look, that team can be somewhat unproductive initially, but we have to carve out the time to drive a pace of innovation and deliver. And so those are things that I think create category disruptors, is you have the time and space to experiment and fail, and you're committed to that because you believe in the long-term productivity and what you can go deliver.
Excellent. Awesome. So let's talk about the future. Not quite sci-fi future yet, but where do you see this space going? Where are the things that you're seeing kind of around the corner that's really going to take this whole generative AI in the collaboration space to the next level? So, Dan?
Yeah, for me, I talk about voice as this last offline data set, and I think large language models suddenly, as I said, we can go capture those conversations on any channel, any device, anywhere in the world. We can instantly summarize and categorize that data, so I can give you a 4-sentence summary. I can tell you the reason that you called, the outcome. I can infer customer satisfaction. And then you can put a large language model on top of all of that analytics. So I think the next thing that happens is the data warehousing and how we visually interact with software is suddenly going to be this assistant that I can simply ask it to tell me things about my business, and it will do that instantly for us. And so I get really excited about your communications platform. It suddenly helps you understand the conversations, provides automation, and ultimately becomes your CRM as well.
Excellent, excellent. Brian, how about customers? What are they saying? Where do they want to see next in terms of these innovations?
Yeah, I think dance started to go here for sure, and you know what I'm having conversations largely about is in the future this idea that we can start to string together multiple models, we can string together multiple sets of processes that can connect from one place to the next, and so instead of just chunking out a discrete component of some kind of workflow or some sort of business process, we actually go right back to the beginning and see it all the way through from end to end. And I think right now where we are from a sort of evolutionary perspective is these are somewhat discrete and inherently separate components, and so there's ways to bring them together, but it's not entirely seamless. And I think where companies would like to go, and what I'm finding myself having discussions a lot about, is how do we get there, where it's seamless to the customer, to the customer's customer, and it all sort of looks like one endless process. And then the second thing that I think is the real opportunity is to take some of these existing business flows that we've come to know over many, many sort of decades of business software mapping to automate business processes and reimagine them. There's a lot of really like tried and true processes that have worked for many years. They're efficient, they're effective, they're automated. That doesn't mean there's not an opportunity now with generative AI to just start completely over and reimagine an entirely new way to be efficient and effective. And for me, those are the funnest conversations, just to kind of reimagine tomorrow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The first point that Brian touched, super important. The ability to chain different actions with generative AI and create entire workflows that are multimodal. If you haven't already, take a look at our announcements around Google Cloud AI extensions that we made this week. That's the way to get to that future today. But John, we haven't heard from you yet.
There's something that just triggered in my mind, so I want to share that. Kind of a contrarian point of view a little bit. Think about something that is really complicated today. You can do it, it has value, but you need experts and you need to develop all this expertise. I was talking to someone at lunch about this. So the level of problem you have to solve to use that technology is way high. Maybe it's a proprietary big data database or it's something like that. Now, I want you to imagine that you're not just using LLM tools to collaborate, but you're collaborating with them. Imagine we take that code generation capability and the ability to infer it, and now it lowers the bar. So now you can use technologies that we already have, but they're just too expensive in terms of time and effort to use, but their price falls. And you don't even have to be from IT to know what happens when a price falls, right? When a price falls, you buy more of it, you use more of it. And I think you could see a resurgence of existing technologies that now become practical because we're able to leverage AI to help us use them.
Excellent, excellent. So a lot of very, very good points that we touched on today. Use cases, where to start, what's coming around the corner. So certainly those are points that are floating in everyone's mind here today.